It's my feel-good breakfast show.
It's a Wednesday morning. We're live, large and in charge on your Feel Good Breakfast Show. And it's a very important time of the school year because this is where grade 9s in schools all over the country get to choose their subjects for grade 10 and the rest of their schooling career. But what should learners take into consideration when choosing these subjects, and how can parents then play a supportive role during this very important decision-making process? Well, today's we're chilling with Educational Psychologist Anel Annandale, who joins us in the studio to give us some guidance on this. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Anel, this is such an important time in a grade 9 learner's schooling career because they're going to do most likely the subjects for the next 3 years. Why is it so important for parents to not only support but, you know, guide their children in the right direction?
Quite often because children are still young at this age. So, you know, there's a lot of guidance that they need. And I think parents can make these amazing catalysts to just help children self-explore, think a little bit about what they do, and what they want to do.
Yeah, I guess the learners are the best place to start. They are the most important. We need to think about them first. It's their future on the line. So you, as a grade 9 learner, what should you be taking into consideration right now, or be aware of at least, when you're making those very important subject choices?
So there are 4 elements really. The most important is that you have to have an idea of what you're good at, where are your strengths, and where are you maybe not so good at. What are your interests? What do you really want to do?
Yeah.
And then how does that fit in with your personality? You know, perhaps you just don't really like the things that you're very good at. So that's also important to keep in mind. And then fourthly, I think you've got to have knowledge of the subjects, and you've got to have knowledge of the possible careers that leads into.
Yeah.
And with all of that information, you can kind of make an educated guess, I think.
Yeah. Well, isn't it possible, because, you know, often parents have an idea of the career path their child should follow, meanwhile the kid prefers something potentially creative or the complete opposite to what mom and dad wants. What should the kid do in that instance, or how should the parents be mindful of not forcing their own visions onto their children?
I think firstly acknowledging that that's what's going on. So if you feel that perhaps your parent is not listening to you or hearing you, saying, I suspect you want me to do this, not because you're worried so much about, you know, my future, but because you think this is going to be the career that's going to bring in the most money and not necessarily make me happy. So have that discussion.
All right, so very, very important decisions to take into account. What were your subjects, by the way?
So I had all the sciences.
Yes.
Biology,
so
science.
this was basically you.
That was me.
And why did you go with those? Was it because of parental pressure, or was it truly something that you were interested in, and did it end up guiding you towards where you wanted to go in terms of it? Yeah, and you can be honest. It's a family show, but we're being honest. It's the breakfast table, first conversations of the morning.
So I actually chose the subjects that I enjoyed the teachers who were teaching them, which is not always a good idea. Luckily, though, they also gave me a very broad base. So I think it just worked out well.
I also feel like I got a bit of a broad base in terms of I could go any direction with my subject choices.
I'm trying to think, I didn't really like my science teacher, but he was a great teacher. Didn't like him as a person, but he was a great teacher. So maybe, yeah, don't consider your teacher's personality, but we'll be speaking again to Anel a little bit later on. Link up with us on our social media platforms and let us know what questions you might have relating to this very important decision in your life, especially if you are a grade 9 learner and you have to make that important decision of choosing the subjects, or you're a parent who's looking for answers to the questions you have in making that educated guess, if you will.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. And earlier we spoke about the importance of this time of the year for grade 9 learners when it comes to choosing their subjects for the rest of their high school career. Now we have Educational Psychologist Anel Annandale with us this morning as we unpack this, especially for parents who have grade 9 learners and need to help them through this entire process.
Absolutely. So, Anel, I guess, as we said earlier on, let's start with the learners, because they are the most important. So as a grade 9 learner, how do you come to understanding your interests so that you can determine which subjects to choose that could help you further those interests? Because I remember when I was in grade 9, I had so many interests. There was sports, there was academics, there was culture, there was everything happening at the same time.
And I think your interests, I think in grade 9, you were still developing your interests. So very important to be open to new experiences. Don't necessarily limit yourself and think, oh, I really don't like this. You know, think about it a little bit more broadly. If you're interested in a subject or a specific career, it's more likely that you're going to be successful in that career and that subject, and also that you're going to enjoy it and stick to it. So important to kind of get and ask other people. Quite often, you know, you might chat to somebody else and someone might say, oh, but I think you really like this because the last time we went out running, you loved it, or, you know, sort of get input from other people as well.
Okay, I think that's very important. Now, we would love to get your input, especially for that grade 9 learner right now that's extremely confused. I was that learner when it came to subject choices. I didn't know what to do. How would you advise them in going about choosing their subjects?
Realize that it's not unusual. So, like I said, you're still developing your interest, you're still figuring out what you want to do.
So don't feel lost if you don't know.
Don't feel lost at all. The best place to start often is if you don't know what to do. So then there's a process of, or if you know what you don't like. So start with, I don't want to do these things, and that might also give you interest. So, for instance, if you don't specifically like maths or numbers, that might mean that you like working with people. So weigh up what you don't like and then try and figure it out from there.
Okay.
Is there a certain thing, though, to be said about, let's say, making sure that you do choose a subject like mathematics, which might potentially open very many doors in terms of your career selection or your path of study in the future? So, yes, you don't like maths, but maths is a very important subject, not only in helping you to add and solve for X, but it helps you think logically. So there's a reason for that.
Absolutely, and I think that's also so important when we start talking about, you know, getting into specific university courses and what are the requirements. So if you're not entirely sure, go for a relatively broad choice that's going to give you lots of different options.
Yeah.
I think we spoke about this earlier as well, but it's not necessarily as restricted when we get to university courses. So for most courses, if you have a good mathematics mark and a good language mark, you can get into a lot of courses at university.
Okay.
Yeah. I was wondering now if maybe the education department could maybe dial it back a little bit. So before we even get to grade 9, right? Host enough career days or career expos where children in primary school and in the early years of high school could go and ask somebody who's a policeman, ask somebody who's an engineer or an accountant about their day. What is it like? What do you do? So that you develop a sense of what that career might be, so that maybe you start working with the end goal in mind to say, well, that's where I know I want to be. These are the subjects I need to choose. Is there a reason for that, or an argument for that?
There's a great need for that, definitely need for that. And I think also dialing it back, young learners starting to speak to students even in the later stages and saying, what subjects are you doing? Do you enjoy it? What are your career paths? So definitely outside and inside within the school.
Yeah. How do you approach it if, you know, sometimes you have situations where parents don't necessarily have the knowledge to help inform their child in making a decision?
Yeah.
What do they do then?
Great question.
I think rely on the community. So very important there, you know, ask maybe whether you can chat to the teachers at the school, lecturers at the university. Perhaps you can also chat to, you know, people in a career, do a little bit of career shadowing. Those kind of things could help.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know who's around you who might be able to help you on with that. Even, you know, parents of other children in that same class that might be able to talk to you about that. Any final words of advice?
Don't panic too much about your subject choice. There's always a chance to change it, or, you know, you can even do a bridging course later on after school. So don't take it too seriously. Try and make the right choice, but then go with it.
Yeah. And have fun, guys. It's still school, hey? At some point, you're going to go to varsity, and then it's going to feel like the most serious thing, and then you're going to start your job, and that's going to be the most serious thing. You're going to start planning for retirement. And then you have
you're freaking everyone out.
And then, you know, it gets a lot. So just enjoy where you are right now. Thank you very much, Anel. Very much appreciated.